they are working for their own benefits, right? They will charge you penalty. You will have to pay double. If you will tell.
Jesus Christ. Somebody in chat was saying that like you shouldn't fall for these types of scams. Some of these scams are actually well, I shouldn't say hilariously, but some of these scams are actually like quite sophisticated or clever. Well, Mizuki T, welcome to the Tier 4 Cyber Clever, buddy. Thanks. There is some guy made a post. I think it was either on legal advice or financial advice. It was actually really interesting. Basically, somebody was able to, I don't know if it was one of the big password leaks, but somebody got a guy's login information, right? But you know, most people have, well, hopefully a lot of people have two-factor authentication turned on or whatnot. But what these scammers did was they called the dude and they said that he had like a problem with his account or something. Oh, no. It's not that he had, I think it was, fuck, I don't want to ruin the details, but it was something like they were able to log into the account, but they couldn't transfer all the money out because they needed to, like, verify, like, via two-factor authentication that it was actually the person. So what the scammers do is they call the person and they say, hey, we're calling from Chase Bank and you've had some fraudulent charges on your account. We just want you to verify that these charges aren't yours or something. And so they're able to read, like, his transaction history, which they go through. But, after they read a few transactions, the guy's like, oh yeah, you know, these are all my transactions. And then they start naming a few that he obviously didn't do because they're not there. And he's like, oh, those aren't mine. And then they ask, okay, well, we need you to authorize us to reverse these transactions. And they're like, okay. And they're like, we need to do a security check to make sure that you're the account holder. So then what they do is, while they're logged into his bank, they try to transfer the money out or change like the account details. And that causes the bank to text him a code saying, can you verify this? This is your security number. And then they ask him on the phone, they say, hey, we just sent you a security number. Can you verify that you got it so that we can verify that it's you? And then he reads them the code, and then they're able to get into his account and change everything. I thought that was a really clever. That sounds like some shit that if you're not thinking hard, like I could fall for that shit. There are a couple of them out there that are pretty clever. Obviously, these like phone scams are meant to prey on like elderly people or whatever, but there are actually a couple pretty sophisticated like phishing things out there. The recommended way to counteract stuff like this is that if you ever get a call from the bank, tell them that you'll call them back on the number, either the number listed on the back of your card, I think is the best route to go. That should always get you back to the bank. Even more clever when they actually call the company and social engineer ways into your account through the company. Yeah, that's a really easy way to do too. I used to be friends with that obnoxious guy a long time ago, and he would tell me some of that shit, some of the crazy fucking shit that he and his friend would do to get into people's accounts. You would call like fuck, what was it? It's like you would call like a customer service area in like some state that you knew that the person lived in, and then you would ask them with some minor help, or you would get elevated to like tier 2 tech support, and you'd like try to troubleshoot an internet problem or something, right? And then once you did, you would say like, hey, like I need to call you back. Can I get your the number to call you back? And can I get your like can I get your employee badge number or something, or your employee ID, so I know who to contact back? And that if the person would give it to him, what you could do is you could call somebody else in that area, and if you knew the right number to call, you could call somebody that deals with like customer accounts. You could say like, hey, I need you to pull some information for a customer for me. My name is XYZ. Here's my employee badge number. And they were able to get people's addresses and shit this way. Some pretty crazy social engineering shit. This is why if you're a streamer, like, I don't know if this even works. I mean, I've done it, but I don't know the effectiveness of it. But you're supposed to call, you're supposed to call your cell phone provider and tell them that you don't want your SIM card ever being replaced without like a specific authorizing password or some way to verify the identity. Because people will also call, right? If you can get access to somebody's cell phone, oftentimes you can unlock everything. You little fucking cuck. Because if you've got the cell phone, you can usually use that as a two-factor to open up all their other accounts. Of all like the meme hacking shit that's like ever been invented, the funny meme is that social engineering is still like one of the most effective ways to gain access to things that you shouldn't have access to. This is why two-factor SMS or whatever is not as secure, since they can social engineer your cell phone account and then reset your shit. Yeah, technically SMS is not really, or rather SIM cards aren't really secure. They should be, but social engineering makes it vulnerable because people can call into your phone company and try to duplicate your SIM card. The real interesting question, the real meme is, are the people that this guy talks to, the people that are doing the scamming, are these people ethically in the wrong? Do you think? That's the real interesting question. Your gut feeling on that. If you work for a company that encourages you to engage in unethical behavior, right? Your gut reaction is always to instantly say, well, of course this is morally wrong. You're calling people and literally scamming them. You're literally in the act of stealing from people, right? But then the question becomes, how many layers removed can you be from something like that before you're no longer culpable? So for instance, let's say that you work for a company, let's say that you work for like Nike or something, right? And you're involved in some pretty heinous overseas practices insofar as like sweatshops or something like that goes, right? If you've identified something wrong that happens in the world and you work for a company that pretty directly contributes to that, right? Are you accountable for those practices? Like yes or no? Those questions become very hard to answer very quickly, I think. And you can remove yourself like 1 or 2 layers from the people that are actually like doing the scamming, and then the question of like, are you morally culpable becomes really hard to answer, I think. Wait, so Destiny, what is your argument as to why those Indian phone scammers might be morally justifiable? Because it's just your job. It's what you do as a job. The question isn't really so much as like, is it morally justified for them to be doing their job? Because I feel like you could make pretty easy arguments against them doing it. It's how many layers removed do you have to be from an unethical action for you to no longer be culpable for it. So for instance, if you got a job where somebody hired you to like rape and murder somebody, I don't think that you can use the excuse, well, it's the company, it's just my job, you know, so I don't think I'm culpable, right? Because you wouldn't let that slide there, right? You would say, well, no, the actions of rape and murder are unethical on their own. It doesn't matter if you're being paid to do it. And then same thing with these kinds of like phone scammers, right? You would argue that, well, the actions of scamming people on the phone are morally unjustifiable, so it doesn't matter if they're being paid by a company to do it. But the question, it becomes very hairy when you find out like how many layers removed do you have to be from something in order for you to no longer be culpable for it, right? If you work for some type of company that has like really immoral practices or something, are you responsible at any level for those practices? Or I would say that if you're aware of it, then you're responsible. Sure, but it's I don't know. I think all of these questions are very interesting. Very interesting. I think that people don't think about this kind of stuff enough. So this was brought up a while ago, and somebody got really mad at me for bringing it up. But like, here's a question, okay? When we went over the Ben Shapiro video, I saw a YouTube comment that got mad at me for insinuating this. It was America responsible for 9/11. So was America responsible for putting people in the airplanes, okay, and then, you know, blowing up the buildings? I don't think so. Probably not. Was America responsible for the creation of the Taliban? Probably, I think. The Taliban have roots in the Mujahideen or whatever. Where's Yankee at? He'll know this, right? But I'm pretty sure that like a lot of our CIA, FBI funding and shit, or no, I should say CIA training and funding and all that shit on overseas during that Soviet war era caused a lot of like crazy shit, a lot of groups to pop up. I think the Taliban has roots to some of that. I know that the United States worked in some capacity with bin Laden in the past. So, like, when you look at an organization like that, you know, did it exist for reasons that can probably be tied back to the United States? Probably. Did bin Laden have sufficient cause to come and attack the United States? Probably. If you read his fatwas, he was very prolific in his writing, so you never have to guess why they bombed the towers, right? They list multiple, foreign events that the United States has been involved in for their justifications for attacking the United States. So, like, was the United States responsible for 9/11? On some level, yeah, it's pretty inarguable, right? It's not like they, 9/11 fucking Kenya or 9/11 fucking, Sudan or Brazil, right? So then the next question is, how responsible is an American citizen for the actions of its country, right? So if you turn a blind eye intentionally to politics in certain parts of the world, and then you go and you elect politicians that support pretty violent actions in those parts of the world, do you become on some level culpable for the, I don't want to say atrocities, but for the foreign policy of your country? I would argue yes. I would argue 100% yes, because I don't think we pay enough attention to what it is we ask our politicians to do, or what our politicians do in foreign countries. I think that's a really big problem with the United States, is that we seem to turn a blind eye to our impacts on other countries in the world.